Will Murphy from Los Angeles. Welcome to today's Tech Talk. I'm joined today by my colleague, Kat Cobell.
Hey, Will Murphy.
I think we were gone on hiatus for a week, and now we're back. We got a webinar today, a blinded preview, and we have a webinar on Friday. So make sure you sign up for that one as well. It's always best to join our webinars as we do not know if the recordings will work out. Therefore, we can't always say that we're going to post them. Of course, try, but can't promise this. So we encourage you to join, plus you have the opportunity to ask questions while you're here versus just watching a video and not getting your questions answered. We got some pre-questions that we're going to cover, plus you have the opportunity now to type in those questions along the way. Kat will try to answer them right away if she can, or I'll answer them after we do our kickoff topic. So why don't we get started? Today the kickoff topic is blinded preview. So we're going to talk about what is the difference between the two. And there are actually two levels of blind. There's a regular blind, and then there's something called blind edit, which is accessed by holding the blind key, where you get a flashing blind key. And then you also have something called preview. Preview might be associated with looking at queue data, whereas blind is mostly associated with your programmer. So if you'd like to preview your queues, use preview. If you're trying to prevent your programmer from outputting to the stage, you'd use the blind key. So let's look at the basic stuff. I've got a couple of queue lists here. We're going to start with the blind function and look at a typical channel sheet. So right now my 3D is showing me what's outputting to the stage. So the 3D right now is responding to the actual stage output. Everything is black. I've selected 4 channels. These are just dimmers, and I bring them to full. So now on my real stage, I see these 4 lights are on, one for each performer. If I don't want this programmer values, the red text indicates programmer values. If I don't want the programmer values to output to the stage, I will hit blind. Now, while the blind is enabled, just the only indicator you have that blind is enabled is the key is lit up. And even though my programmer tells these lights to be on, they are not on the stage. You
also have the command line there with that new little domino looking thing.
If you have the blind message indicator activated, you'll see this little weird 3-dot symbol. You'll notice that 3 dots goes away. When it's on, it's there. Now the message center has some options. I've seen situations where people disable the blind message notification. But we have a cool little tech support feature, whereas if you hold the MA key, it shows all message center icons regardless of whether they're enabled or disabled. So even if this wasn't enabled, you can just hold MA to see all the messages that are popping up. So this is a very simple blind function. If you have stuff captured in your programmer with red text and you don't want it to go to the stage, you just hit the blind key. There is a way to come out of blind with timing. So if I'm in blind mode, coming out of blind follows your program time. So if I enable this, now it's at 5 seconds. When I come out of blind, these lights are going to fade up over 5 seconds. The same thing going into blind will respect your program time. So if you want to go into blind and out of blind, remember blind, the first level of blind, just to prevent programmer values, red text values, from going to the stage. There's another level of blind called blind edit. And this is actually a secondary programmer. So right now we're in the live programmer. We've disconnected the live programmer from the stage by entering blind. Now the live programmer is going to the stage. There's a second programmer called the blind programmer, and you access this by holding the blind key. And you notice MA3D is still showing me live values. So these lights are still on because my live programmer told them to be on. But with the blind key flashing, I'm in what is called blind edit mode, which is essentially a secondary programmer. There is no link between the live and the blind programmer. Everything you do in here will never go to the stage. It's only in the blind editor. It's a nice way to play around with some values. Your playbacks, however, are still live to the stage. So I have a cue list here. I hit go. These lights still go live to the stage, but no matter what I do in my blind programmer, I can select all these and try to take them to 0. Yeah, my blind programmer says they're at 0, but on stage they're still live because this is just a second programmer. The nice thing about this is you can look at stuff. You can do whatever you want in here. Look at values, look at presets. Something that I've done sometimes is I want to see what's in these color presets. So for example, I'll edit this red preset and it shows me that there's a red value stored to this preset. Nothing changes on my stage. So if you want to mess around in your programmer but you don't want it to go to the stage, just hold your blind key. The nice thing is because this is a secondary programmer, it saves the state. So right now I'm back in the live programmer. Remember, these 3 channels were captured in my live programmer. I can hold blind again and I'm back in my blind programmer, which has the status of where I left off. Sometimes people build macros around the blind programmer where they want to do a bunch of quick stuff, but they don't want to those presets. They want to bring those presets into their programmer and make some changes, but they don't want that to go live to the stage. So remember, you can figure out all this syntax by just doing the function and looking in the command line feedback window. So you see, to enter the blind edit, you'll notice you do blind edit or blind edit on, and to leave blind edit, you'd use blind edit off. So you could put this into your macros as well. Now, one thing that I haven't done is that my 3D is not linked to the same user as the console here. So my on-PC console is logged in as user 2, but MA3D is logged in as guest. This means that my 3D is always looking at the live stage. If I change this so that 3D is logged in as the same user as the desk, this is what allows me to go to the stage view and zoom in and out of stage view and have 3D track. The same is true for blind edit. So regular blind, all I'm doing is disconnecting the programmer values from the stage. But if I hold my blind key, I'm now in blind edit mode. Notice that 3D has followed me into blind edit mode, as indicated in the top right. This means that I can look at stuff in MA3D without it affecting the DMX values on stage. So the actual DMX, if we go here, bring these to 0, bring these to full, you don't see these 3 channels changing on the DMX because the DMX is actually live. These channels are only changing in the programmer, and because MA3D is logged in as the same user, MA3D follows me into blind edit mode as well. Very handy feature when your designer walks away and leaves you with a state of your programmer, and you can't save it, you don't want to change it, but you want to go do some messing around. You can go into blind edit mode, manage your presets, and anytime the stage manager says go, you can always hit the go key because your playbacks are always live to the stage. Now the other thing people request a lot is that so far blind is, remember, associated with programmer. The other thing people want to do is they want to be able to look at their cues. They want to look at what their cues are actually going to output to the stage, but they don't want to actually output those to the stage. So I'm just going to show you this simple cue list that I built here. It's based on just channels. So channel 1 is at full, channel 2 goes to full, channel 11 comes up to a value, etc. This is a simple queue list. If I want to look at what Q2 is doing, I can preview it. So I could say preview Q2, please. It's assuming my selected executor here, and it takes this executor into preview mode. And now what happens, you notice the channel sheet changes to a red title bar. I get this encoder bar that allows me to step through queues so I can look at them. You'll notice your stage view goes into a red title bar because your stage view is in preview mode. Your fixture sheet is in preview mode. And because MA3D is logged in as the same user, this is in preview mode as well. So it's the same idea as blind editor, but blind edit is to a second programmer. Preview is to preview queues. If you didn't want 3D to follow you into preview mode, just be a different user. So now 3D is still live. But if 3D is logged in as the same user as the console, now preview follows you into preview mode. Preview is also a secondary programmer. So if you want to make some changes or have a look at what it would look like to add some fixtures, you could totally do this. This is not outputting to the stage. This is only in preview. It doesn't change any of your DMX values. And you'd have the option to update this queue. So if we hit preview again, we'll see we're dealing with Q2. I could update Q2 if I wanted to. In case you want to go back to your live stage, the nice thing is that the preview editor remembers the state that you were in. So I can hit double tap preview and I'm back in my live programmer, and my 3D is showing me what's live to the stage. If I double tap preview, it takes me back to where I left off. So preview always remembers where you were as long as you double tap to leave and double tap to enter. If you're not in preview at the moment and you want to preview Q5, clear out what was happening in your preview editor right now because you have some channels captured, I could say preview Q5, and what this does is it clears out your existing preview state and takes you into previewing Q5. Another thing people ask is they'd like to be able to preview their queues based on the actual preview, based on the actual queue timing. And instead of stepping through them with the encoder or snapping to a queue, you can actually send playback commands to the preview executors. And you do that using this little playback section. So I'd say go preview, and you notice it's running my preview queue in real time. Remember, we're in preview. My real executors are still in Q1 outputting to the stage. And I want to preview my next queue, so I say go preview. And it runs the next queue, and I can say go preview again, and you see it run in real time. You also have a way of previewing multiple executors. So if I go back to live, let's say I am in Q2 and Q1 looks like this. If I wanted to see what both of these executors together looked like, but in preview, not in real life, I can preview executor 201 and 202. No, maybe this doesn't work, Kat. Do you remember, Kat?
I've actually never used that function.
I believe you guys. I'm sorry. I know this is possible. I think you need a real desk because I know the way that it actually works is you'll hold preview with one finger and tap on all the executors that you want to preview. I think maybe this is not, I think I remember this is not possible via syntax. I'm going to try a couple other syntax here. 201 and 202. Yeah, you need a real desk for this. So keep this in the back of your mind. Next time you're at an actual desk, hold your preview key and tap on multiple executors, and you'll notice they all pile on each other in the preview environment. So you do have a way to preview more than one executor at a time. You also have some quick buttons to step through queues here. If you're a type of user that is used to making changes in your preview queues, and you want that to automatically update the queues instead of having to go through the update process, we've added this auto update button. And what that does is that if I change channel 2 to say 30, and it automatically updates the queue. So that can be handy if you like auto update. If you don't, you just use your normal workflow. You'd put a new value here, and you'd say update Q2. We have this thing called keep selection. That's kind of nice so that when you enter and leave preview, it keeps your selection. So if I select these three and I enter preview, it is not keeping my selection. Very handy. I love it when things work out the way I expect. Preview this? Yeah, okay. Because double tapping preview takes you to the last state, remember? But since if I'm previewing a new executor, I have these three selected and I preview this new executor, it does keep my selection. And then you have another option to keep programmer. So in the event that you had these at 20%, when you preview this executor, you notice they're not at 20% in your preview. But if you enable this setting, now when I preview this executor, it keeps the programmer, it takes the programmer values from my live programmer and moves them into your preview programmer. So some different options here. It's very versatile. If you have a specific way that you want to work in preview mode and you can't figure it out, just send us an email at support@lighting.com. We'll try to help you out and get preview working the way you want. Remember, to get 3D working, to follow you into preview mode, you have to have 3D logged in as the same user as you, which is done in the 3D tab. And that's essentially blind, regular blind, which just disconnects the programmer from the stage. If you hold your blind key, you get into blind edit mode, which is a secondary programmer. These, remember, are not connected to live. Whatever you do in the blind editor never goes live to the stage. If you did want it to go live to the stage, store a queue. So if you made something in here, you really wanted it to go live to the stage, store a queue, and then hit go. And now it's going to go live to the stage. And then you have preview for looking at what the queues look like in a preview state, which you can use 3D for this, or you can just look at your channel sheet, fixture sheet, DMX sheet, stage view. There you go. If you have any questions about that, type them out. We have any questions, Kat?
Yeah, we have lots of questions here when everyone's signed up. Hey, Will Murphy, is it possible to change a filter with a macro?
Yep. You guys can figure this stuff out on your own because you just need to look at a command line response window. Command line. Tap a filter. Oh, filter 4. Oh, filter 5. Oh, filter 6. Guess what? Now I know how to change it via macro. We build a GUI. This is a syntax-based software. We build a GUI that is our shortcuts to syntax. So, what's your macro? Filter 4. Filter 5. So, build the filter you want. Pay until RGB. Cool. That's filter 8. And then in the macro, yeah, filter 8. Cool. Called filter 8. Or if you want to permanently select filters, so they're always so it's always the filter, you'd use select. So select turns to green. So now every time you clear your programmer, it reverts to this particular filter. I want to keep the all filter. Cool.
Cool. I'm actually going to back this one up a little bit too. We do have a question about how to use filters. So kind of back that up and tell us what are filters used for, Will?
Filters are used to limit what you have access to changing. So I built a filter that only gives me access to pan tilt RGB. When I call that filter, there's a green bar. Now I select these fixtures and I say on selection. And you notice it only activates what I have access to. The other thing that you would do with filters is it limits what you can store. So if I select Executor 1, go back to my all filter, I might put these fixtures on the singer, make them orange. Bring them to full. We put in the rose gobo, and now I have dimmer, pan, tilt, gobo, and RGB that are active. But maybe in my first queue, I only want to store dimmer and position. So if I call my dimmer and position filter and I say store please, you notice only dimmer and position deactivates because that's the only data that got stored. Now my next queue maybe is only color. I don't have a color only filter, so I'm going to create one.
Now, is there a way to create that via syntax, Will, or did you just have to use the GUI to get in there?
I don't think there's a way to create this via syntax. I can try. I have one idea. So we'd store that, and now it only stores the color. I have an idea. I never tried to create. Maybe it respects the active values. Cool. Do we store that? No, that stores everything. Do you know?
I've never used anything other than the GUI for this. I'm not sure of the syntax.
Yeah,
Even watching you click through the filter, it doesn't look like it's letting you know what attributes are stored to it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way to create these filters via syntax, but you can use these big buttons as shortcuts. So if you only want to store position data, you'd say store if position, and you see it says store if position, and if enter only stores position to the next queue. And if you hold your if key, which I can't do with on PC, but if you hold your if key, you can tap dimmer position gobo, and it will create syntax that includes all three of these. I can show you with minus if, because you say store minus if position and gobo. No, that didn't work either. Store if minus. Had it backwards. You have to say store if minus color and gobo, and if says store everything but color and gobo. So if you don't have these filters created, you can just tap. So this would be the kind of syntax that you might throw into macros, but personally, this GUI is easier to look at in my opinion. If you really desperately need a way to create these via syntax, email support@aclighting.com. We'll look into it a little further, but I don't think it's possible.
Cool. Is that all you have to say about filters, Will?
Yes.
All right, cool. Next question. How do I use Stopwatch with a queue?
I guess you want to have Stopwatch automatically insert timed follows. There's a predefined macro for this, so I would suggest just using this predefined macro. Timers. At the timer pool, there's a little stopwatch that's running. If we open a macro pool, I can load predefined macro. Ooh, now I get to find where this is in the list. Do you remember what this is called, Kat?
What are you looking for?
The predefined macro for assigning a timer, a stopwatch time.
I will continue the search with you.
what do you call it? Learn time? Maybe it's under L. Yeah, learn time, go button. There it is. Okay, so what this does is it pauses timer 1, it sends a go command to your selected executor, which takes you to the next queue. The timer is now paused at, say, 10 seconds. Therefore, the follow time for the next queue that you're currently in needs to be 10 seconds, so it assigns the timer object time of 10 seconds to the trigger time column of the current queue, turns off timer 1, starts it again. So the idea here is my selected executor probably started out as a go, and we would want to off this timer. Yep. So now go. Obviously the first queue would be 0 times. So now the little timer is running. Okay, and roughly right now, okay, go. And what it does is it took that timer object value and put it into the trigger time column. And then I hit go again and decided not to go to the next queue. There we go. So normally your first queue, you're going to want to change that back to a go. And now the nice thing is what happens is that you've basically learned the time for your follow queues. So predefined macro, learn, trigger time, go button, and that's how you would use the stopwatch with your queues.
Cool. What's your answer? You're sticking to it?
Yep.
All right. Hey, Will, what is the best way to do a fixture exchange between a CMY fixture and a color wheel fixture?
CMY to color wheel or vice versa?
How about both?
Yeah, no, it's this color transform function. So I guess my alpha QWOs, now we'll do the washes. So these are CMY fixtures. I need to replace them with a color wheel only fixture, which would be a regular Sharpie. Standard lamp on. Cool. This is why you get this color transform pop-up. The only time you should use this is if you're going from RGB slash CMY to color wheel, or you go color wheel to RGB CMY. The other time you might use this is if you're going from a 7-color LED to a 3-color LED. If the attributes are the same, remember we do an additive-based mixing system. So if you're going from CMY to RGB, do not color transform. These are exactly the same. They're just inverses of each other. The system handles this automatically. If you're going from RGB AW to RGB, yes, color transform, because the attributes are not the same. And if you're going from CMY to color wheel or RGB to color wheel, yes, transform. So in this instance, my color transform options, I obviously have to prefer color wheel because my destination fixture is only a color wheel. And then I will transform, and it has modified all my colors to accommodate this change. Cool?
Cool. Hey, Will, can you give us a quick overview of the freeze button, the freeze function?
Yeah, the freeze function is just deciding whether your console acts as latest takes precedence for everything, or if your programmer always has precedence over your playbacks. So it's just a priority state for your programmer. If I jump back to channel sheet, we'll off everything. So I say go, and channel 1 goes, and then channel 2 goes, and channel 3, etc. So let's come back. Remember, Q2 changes channel 2. So if I set this to 50%, channel 2 is at 50. When I hit go, freeze is off. When I hit go, the latest takes precedence action steals away that value from my programmer because the queue told that channel to go somewhere. Freeze you would use if you don't want your playbacks stealing values from your programmer. This is not park. This is not park. This just says when these channels are captured in my programmer, playbacks cannot take them away. So all these values are moving. Cool. Now, nothing can happen because these are captured in your programmer. The reason I might toggle this on and off is that normally I like a latest takes precedence desk. I like to know that when I hit go, those lights are going to go there even if I've accidentally captured them in my programmer. But if I've taken a couple fixtures, say these guys, and I've put them on the singer, and I made them open white, and I want those attributes to stay there. Even if I hit go, I would have freeze on. And now I can run this executor, which normally takes those lights. But you notice something funny. They're still pointed on that singer, but they've changed color. And that was my mistake. What I should have done is, because I want them to stay open white, is please, please, which captures all attributes. So now when I step through this queue list, those lights stay white, they stay on that performer. I don't have to worry about go or color or anything getting in the way, they just stay there. Now when I'm done, when I'm ready for these to fall back into place, disable freeze. Nothing's changed on stage, it's just the state of the programmer, but now when I hit go, these lights fall back into place where they're supposed to be, so it looks like I'm a magical programmer even though I'm not. I didn't expect this to happen. It just looks like I knew what I was doing. And that's freeze.
Awesome. Hey, Will Murphy, you just came back from Montreal, and you showed off some of what MA3D can do. We had some stage markers, I want to say, set up in that show. How do we set those up?
These are just fixtures, and stage markers are used to tell lights where to point. So, you first need to patch stage markers. So we patch some stage markers, maybe we patch two. So these are MA lighting fixtures. So if you search for MA lighting items, we want a stage marker. I'm going to just do two for the fun of it. We'll make those 501. Put them way out of the way. These don't eat up your license parameters, so put them at a higher universe. And then for any fixtures that you want to have follow those stage markers, they need to have XYZ enabled. So we enable XYZ. So I'm only going to use them with my QWOs, so I'm only going to enable it for the QWOs. And now we save. Now what these little markers are, they're these little yellow things, or these little dots that show up in your 3D and your little stage view. So if you're looking at 3D there on the bottom left, you see a little dot, a little yellow marker, and there's another one, and you can tell the lights, Y is downstage and upstage, and these just tell your lights where to point. So if you're using a tracking system or a motion control system, using the protocol PSN, this tracking system can give us the XYZ coordinates of these yellow balls, and you can make the lights follow it. Or you could just do your programming, like you have manual control. These are just fixtures, and people, just to make their life easier, rather than having to deal with updating lots of presets, do your programming based around the stage marker and tell your lights to point there. So how do you tell your lights to point there? Well, you're going to grab the alpha spots, and under position, you're not going to use 10 tilt. You're going to toggle over to the stage B feature, and you want these lights to follow marker 1. Now what it now is doing is it's a relative reference. So we need to tell these XYZ coordinates to be 0, 0, 0, which says point right at the marker. I was clicking the wrong button here. There we go. Now it's going to point right at the marker. Maybe we zoom this down so it's a little more spot on. And we'll put this at 25% so it's easier to see these. A little brighter, a little brighter. So now, lights are there. I go back to Fixture 501, which is my stage marker, and now when I move this yellow ball, those lights follow it. So for a simple test, what I usually do is I'll put this at 0 just so we can look at what happens. And I put a little sine wave on this X, so it goes left and right. Super fast. Put it at 3 BPMs. I want it to go -4 meters to 4 meters. And now that yellow ball, there's just be a sine wave going to go back and forth. And just for this marker, I'd store a Q. So active for the selected marker fixture. And I'll run that Q. And now this is running. So what am I going to do with the fixtures? Remember, the fixtures are still active here. So we select them. I'm going to zoom these down a little farther, all the way. Now we put them at 25%, a little easier to see. Remember, I mentioned initially a relative reference. What's really nice is our brain normally thinks, oh, point these lights right at that yellow dot. But what if the yellow dot is referencing the foot? And you really want these lights to be pointed on the person's head. This is where on the Z of the fixture, you could do an offset. So now these end up being 2 meters above that yellow dot, a relative reference. The other thing you could do is on the Z, or on the X, we can align these values. So I'm going to say align to center. We'll go the other way. And now the lights are kind of spread on each side of that yellow dot. So really nice relative reference. And yes, there's a sine wave going back and forth. Can come back and I can bring the Z up and go upstage, downstage. So if you just use these for everyday programming, you're not receiving position information from any kind of tracking or motion control system. You have to think a little bit backwards. You just can set stage marker position presets, and just have to update little positions to make sure those lights are pointed at the yellow dot. To get this to work really nicely, you do have to be pretty diligent about hanging your fixtures correctly. But all in all, it can be really fun. The really interesting thing is you can have an effect running on the marker, which I do now, and you can have an effect running on the fixtures, which basically means you get kind of 2 effects running. So if I jump over here to the X, on just the X form, I'll do a sine wave, which is going to go super fast now. And I only want to go like -3 to +3. And do a spread of fade. So now I've got this yellow ball going back and forth, and I've got a sine wave on the X, so the lights are going back and forth. And I guess I could mirror this, which would make it look a little more neat. So imagine doing a circle around this yellow ball, and then you have this circle just kind of going around the edge of the stage, if you can picture that. A lot of weird stuff you could do. Give it a try.
That was a cool stage marker demonstration there, Will. I have a question about editing and updating. You want to just talk about both of those functions, Will?
Updating and what?
Editing.
Editing and updating?
Yeah, editing and updating.
Yeah, these are very different. It's personal preference. Edit. When you edit something, you notice it clears out your programmer first. So if I say edit Q1, here, oh, I just lost everything in my programmer. Maybe you don't want that, so maybe you shouldn't edit. What it does is edit will pull in the values from the object that you're editing. So if I want to edit this Q1, I'd say edit Q1 on this executor. It brings in all the values. Sure, you can change the color, and then the update key lights up, and do you want to update Q1? Now what's kind of annoying about this is suddenly I've broken the link to a preset. So not a good idea. What I might do instead is that I'd go to a green preset, and now it would make sense. Oh, I jumped out of edit mode. So edit Q1 here, and I'd change to a preset, and now I could update. It updates the queue. It's the same thing as, this is exactly the same as going into the queue, selecting the fixtures, choosing orange, and hitting this update key. It's the same thing. This is just personal preference. I have a preference of, I usually never use edit to actually update data. I like the update button better. But what is handy about edit for me is that I could be doing something in my programmer, and I really want to see what is in this preset. And that's where I'll use edit. I say edit this preset. Now in my programmer, I can see what's in there. That's all I really use it for. This is one thing where I like blind. I don't like to screw around with my live stage, so a lot of times I'll go into blind edit, and then blind edit mode, then I'll edit this preset. Oops, take a look at what's in here, and then I can see what's in here. Now, in version 3.1, which is the current release, we improved preset handling, which makes the edit button a little more useful. I would encourage you to go to our YouTube Tech Talk page and look at this first video, Preset Manager Tech Talks, because I explain more about the edit button associated with managing your presets. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit. Update is a little bit more like a store merge. Edit allows you to look at the data, try them both out. There's no right or wrong way. They just are two different ways of dealing with looking at data and updating data. Cool. I guess there's time for one more question.
Time for one more. A couple of these seem like they're going to be long-winded. How would you set up a layout view?
How would you set up a layout view?
Yeah.
Well, layout views have a very specific rule. You store fixtures to layout, and you assign objects. Store fixtures, assign objects. So, go layout. If you want some fixtures in your layout, cool, you select those fixtures and you store to the layout. Now those fixtures are in my layout. If you would like objects there, such as macros, you'd say, or presets, assign this through this here, and now those macros are there. So remember, store fixtures, assign objects. Everything else, just sit there and play. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I could spend an hour going through every little detail. You have to go to setup. You right click to show the name, to not, show the dimmer bar, not, show dimmer value, visualize, no visualization, spot, big, you want symbols, okay, I'll make it a head mover. Now there's a symbol in there. If you want sub-fixture IDs, you could show that. If you want to arrange them, you have arrange to line, circle. Cool, now they're in a circle, zoom to fit. You can add text with this text box that decided to freeze. This bug. Yeah, this bug with this text box. format. This is on PC bug, hopefully the next version. So now you have something that says Fixtures. You want to make that bigger. Just makes the box bigger, not the set font, of course. Sorry, here's the font. Now you can change the text color. I want it to be red. Cool, now it's red. These macro objects. What are you doing? Get rid of, go back to select mode. These macro objects are currently referencing the pool icon. Go to simple, and now you can make a border color blue and a background color magenta. I don't know what else to say about layouts. You just have to do them. Sit there and play with all these things until you find something that thinks cool. Try all the settings. Right click, mess with the encoders, add icons should you wish. Cool. Anything else?
I think that that about does it for this webinar.
We are at the end of our webinar.
Yeah. Will, do you have any helpful places to look if you have questions regarding Legrand MA2?
I do. Help.malighting.com, ACK-Lighting support tab, Claypacky.2, MA2, MA hardware, ImageQ, go to Grammar 2, lots and lots of really nice bulletins, some videos. Remember the ACK-Lighting Tech Talks page. There's some videos up here. Any webinar that we successfully record, we post. Some of them we don't. I'd encourage you to join. And if you've not participated, make sure you go to ma-share.net community forum. Just read this. There's a lot of really good stuff here. This is not filled with a bunch of useless information. It's filled with real nice questions, and we answer them. The MA guys answer them. Other people answer them. It's a good forum to keep an eye on. Cool. There you go. It's been a pleasure, you guys. Oh, you can always email us questions at support@acklighting.com. We will see you on Friday. Happy programming.
Good day.